Good morning, hello, good afternoon, whatever. This is Things Involving Me, general update, November 9th, 2023. This morning after I fed the cats, I watched this video by Nick Werber, titled, let me see, A Little Known Sign That You're Healing, Feeling Guilty. And he was talking about the waves of guilt that you feel when you're cutting off toxic people or getting yourself out of bad situations that, are counterproductive to your own healing. And he said that the guilt comes from just your original terrible family programming, the dynamic of that, of your abusive upbringing. And it feels counterintuitive, and it makes you feel a little guilty because it's just going against the way you were raised. It's programming, and it takes a lot of effort to deprogram the guilt, but ultimately you will be a better person for it. And after watching that, I realized that I never updated you guys on how I dealt with the creepy old perverted colostomy geezer that was lingering in my shop at the flea market every Saturday for months. It went kind of poorly because I festered about it a little too long in my head. He skipped a weekend, and it took 2 weeks to actually deal with the whole thing. And while I was in the middle of confronting him and telling him that I felt very uncomfortable, and I felt that his presence was inappropriate. I didn't use those words, it was a little bit more colorful, but I didn't cuss. Some customers that were regulars came in, and they caught a little bit of it, and it was a little bit embarrassing, but ultimately it has been, I want to say, another 3 months, and he has not come back at all. 2 weeks ago, he did pass by my booth and look inside real good and leer at me and give me a dirty look, but that was it. And yeah, so yep, that was it. Kind of a little bit childish of him. Anyway, I have had a lot of time to explore why I felt guilty for asking that man to not come back into my stall. And it is 100% because of the way I was raised. Not the traumatic aspect of it. Well, maybe it was a little traumatic too. But not the like clearly traumatic parts of it, but the fact that almost all of the women, actually all of the women that I know in my family that are blood related to me, are in the medical profession in one way or another. They deal directly with patients in one way or another. My mom was an ER nurse. Now she's administration, but she was an ER nurse for most of my life, as was my grandmother. And toward the end of my grandmother's working career, she worked in an elder care home. And one of my aunts is a pharmacist. The other one was a neurologist. Yeah. And I take after the men in my family. I am a shiftless, layabout, fuck-up artist. And I'm perfectly happy with it. I take care of what I have to take care of in my house and nothing else. And that's the thing. The women in my family, my mother and my aunts and my grandmother, they put it in my head that it was my job to just forget about my needs and take care of everybody else that needs taking care of. You have to be the shining light and Florence Nightingale in the room. If somebody is in pain and suffering, you got to handle that shit. You know, that's how the women in my family acted, and that's how they kind of expected me to act. And no. So I guess I have a rebellious nature or whatever, but I just, you know, I didn't turn out like that. I didn't want to do all of that stuff for other people, because it just, my whole life I had to serve other people, and it just makes me feel bad, and it hurts, and I'm tired of it, and yeah. So I ran away from it, and I distanced myself from it. And that's that. And I'm not going to be that person anymore. And you know, one of the things that led me to prolong this man's presence in my booth, we're back to the geezer, is one day when I closed up shop early and it was raining a little bit. While I was leaving, I saw the old man just sitting out in the rain, getting wet, no umbrella, no protection, just sitting there outside the flea market, completely fucking dejected. It was like 12 o'clock, and that man usually stayed until closing time. So I don't know. And it just made me feel bad, like, oh, this man is miserable, and he hangs out at the flea market all day long because people just drop him off there and sling him out and don't want to deal with him. And I kind of don't want to deal with him either, but then, you know, the guilt and the, oh, you got to take care of the people that are sad and miserable and infirm. And yeah, no, I don't. No, I don't. I don't have to handle old perverts with their colostomy bags hanging out all over the place. I don't have to be a psychologist. I'm not a licensed professional psychologist. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a nurse or a pharmacist or neurologist or anything like that. I'm just fucking Bonnie G from down the block. And it feels really good to not have to feel like I have to be responsible for people. You know, I'm going to talk about ancient history now. Bill and I had this horrible fucking ginger roommate. And we had this horrible ginger roommate because I am a bleeding heart. And if you have a sob story, I'm like, oh, you know, you can come crash on my couch for a little bit. And that little bit turned into like 3.5 years. And he didn't work for most of it, and he was one of those people that is learned helplessness. The kid couldn't even, I say kid, he was 21 the day he moved in with me. And I think I was like 32 or something. So he couldn't even take the trash out without grunting and carrying on and acting like the trash was biting him. You know? And you couldn't trust him to clean anything, and he was a scumbag, an absolute scumbag. I won't get into it, but he was horrible. And every time I'd, you know, get to a point where I needed to ask him to just fucking leave, he would cry and something would happen, and a couple of times he'd fake a seizure and make me feel bad for him. And, you know, he told me that his parents were abusing him and he couldn't go back to Illinois. And he was an adult, and it really wasn't my problem, and he was acting like I was supposed to be his mom. And I finally broke, and I bought him a ticket to Illinois. I bought him a bus ticket to Illinois and kicked him out. And I freaked out after that for almost a week, crying and not having anything to do with my time and feeling like I hurt this kid and doomed him to homelessness and terribleness, and I didn't want to hurt him. And it really, really wasn't my fault. And I shouldn't have felt guilty for it, because he was taking advantage of mine and Bill's kindness, using us up, and just not giving a fuck. And I felt fucking terrible for it for a long time, and I still have a little bit of anger every once in a while. Like, some event will set me off, and I'll just like, God damn, I'm glad that motherfucker's out of my life. Like when I see a kid passing, like get out of a car and pass in front of the car, it's like one of those things that the ginger used to do when I dropped him off. He had a job at Walmart for like almost 6 months until I started making him take the bus to work. And when I dropped him off, he'd slam my door really, really hard and blow out my eardrum almost, and then walk in front of the car so that I couldn't just pull off and go. And he'd stand there real slow and walk to the door and just irritate the fuck out of me. And yeah, every time I see a kid do that, I'm like, oh, I'm glad that guy is gone. It used to be worse. I used to like sling profanity out loud. But I have calmed down, mercifully, thankfully for myself. Yes. And this kind of is a loose lead into my next subject of how I am modifying my life thoughtfully and meaningfully and mindfully. Last night I spent about an hour and a half going through my subscriptions on YouTube, and I unsubscribed from 150 Amberlynn Reid related channels. 150 of them. I kept 2. I kept Girl World Ireland and Mr. Snowflake, and that's it. Because I just like Girl World Ireland. I think he's funny as hell, and Mr. Snowflake covers other things. So yeah, the reason that and I also unfollowed a bunch of all of the Amberlynn related stuff on Instagram, except for Goose Chuck, and she's not really Amberlynn related. She's Foodie Booty related, so it doesn't count anyway. Yeah, where was I? Oh, Amberlynn stuff. So I had an epiphany last night before I did the mess, unfollowing, unsubscribing of her crap. It's all pointless. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really go anywhere. She's not a talented person. She has nothing to offer. She has no skills. She has no real insight, and if she does have any insight, she will color it with lies and then embellish it and not be able to communicate it anyway, because she has such a low IQ and such a very, very limited vocabulary. So it's all pointless. I used to be fascinated by it. At first I was, I had hope, then I was disgusted, then I was just fascinated, and now I'm just back to being disgusted by it. It's not going anywhere. I don't want to look at her anymore. I don't care anymore. She has no effect on my life other than showing me what not to do and what not to be and what not to care about. And that's it. And I can fucking figure that shit out without her anyway. There's thousands of other fucking locals on the internet. And I don't even have to have locals to figure that shit out. I could just go to the fucking flea market. So yeah, I'm done with Amber. I know I've said this before. I know I've said this before. And hopefully I will never say it again. But I am done. I'm done giving a fuck. I'm done hoping. I'm done having faith. I'm done in her. I'm done, you know, being curious, because it's just not gonna go anywhere. Okay, now she's got a new fucking diagnosis. Oh boy. She's just gonna have another excuse and be that much more insufferable and go that much more downhill. I don't fucking care anymore. Hi, Abby. How are you? Sweet girl. Mwah. Anyway, I am gonna go into my art room and try and do some things and maybe make a video about that later. Okay, bye.